after using Johnson & Johnson talc products.
Call our lawyers at 1-800-835-1207 now.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the final week of the trial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard is underway in Fairfax County, Virginia. And at the center of it all, allegations that Johnny Depp abused Amber Heard.
It was like it kept hitting him. It didn't feel pain. It was just a pressure on my pubic bone.
But Johnny Depp says he never abused Amber Heard and that he is the victim of domestic violence.
She threw the large bottle and it made contact and shattered everywhere. The tip of my finger had been severed. Blood was just pouring out.
Today, Amber Heard's legal team called expert witnesses, including one who says Depp could not have injured his finger the way he says he did.
It's a palmar tissue loss, and the loss is from distal to proximal, which is from the tip back far below the nail. And so for it to create that tissue loss down there would almost certainly have to be injury dorsally with that described mechanism.
And the jury heard from a psychologist who spoke on Depp's alleged substance abuse and intimate partner violence.
In this case, you're talking about someone who has a severe substance use disorder. I do want to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that intimate partner violence and substance use disorders are two scourges in this country. They're two plagues. This is very serious stuff we're playing with.
It was followed by a heated cross-exam.
Narcissism has correlation with IP. Again, you're not allowed me to answer. You're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs between the traits that are consistent with, which all I'm commenting on is behaviors and traits that are consistent with the diagnosis and Mr. Depp.
Let's go back again, and maybe we can focus on the question I ask you, and we can get an answer that's addressed to that question.
All that and more tonight. This hour of Closing Arguments starts right now. Good evening to you and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant, in tonight for Vinnie Politan. He's got the night off. If you are counting, today marks day number 20 in the trial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. So Amber Heard's legal team right now is approaching the end of their case in chief. And today they called an expert witness to the stand who stole the show and the attention of the jury. He is a psychiatrist and has expertise in the area of intimate partner violence. His name is Dr. David Spiegel, and he gave his opinion on Johnny Depp's substance abuse problems and the link he says it has to intimate partner violence.
In my opinion, based on my review of the evidence, based on my clinical experience, based on my publishing experience, based on my teaching experience, that Mr. Depp has behaviors that are consistent with both someone who has a substance use disorder as well as consistent behaviors for someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence.
What, if any, correlation is there between domestic abuse, heavy alcohol abuse, and cognitive disorders?
So, the risk factors, if you would, for intimate partner violence, okay, and there are probably many of them. I don't have time to go over all of them, but the ones in particular, characters in particular, are one, having someone in the relationship who is jealous or suspicious. Two, having someone who has a higher than average acceptance of violence ideations. Three, someone who has rapid and extreme mood shifts. Four, someone who has limited self-control. One of the roles of cognition, one of the roles of our brain, is to prevent inappropriate behaviors and acting out on thoughts. We all get angry at people. That's human. We all get angry at people. We all think things about people. The difference is when our brains are intact and working well, most of us don't act them out, okay? Most of us do not act them out. So that's because your frontal lobe and other parts of the brain are involved in making sure these negative thoughts don't get acted on, okay? So when you have the effects of alcohol acutely, it causes disinhibition, which means you are, by definition, losing control and having rapid mood swings. 2, you are affecting parts of the brain that are involved in what we call social processing cues. So you no longer can interpret what's in front of you that is, I would say, right or wrong, or what I should act on and what I shouldn't act on. So we act on them, even though sober, and I've seen it with Mr. Depp's record evidence, I've seen it clinically. Sober, we can contain that. We can contain that. But when you have these mixtures together, knowing, by the way, that about 40 up to 60% of intimate partner violence is done under the influence of alcohol and or substance use disorders, okay? Knowing that treating it gets it better, improves, I'm not saying it removes it, but improves it. Hearing from Mr. Depp's own text to Dr. Kipper that he was better with that things are going better, will show you that given those confluence of factors, given them all lining up, the risk factors, combined with something that when any of us use to a certain amount, if we're novice at it, it'll be a lot less. If we're more experienced and have more tolerance and dependence, it's gonna take a lot more, but inevitably will make us disinhibited and will make us act out, and acting out can be done in a lot of different ways in intimate partner violence, okay?
Oh, Dr. Spiegel, it's apparent he's done this once or twice before, hasn't he? Tweet us, let us know your thoughts about him. Let me bring in now for some more discussion, Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. She got to witness all of his testimony inside the courtroom. She's joining us now outside of the courthouse with some details. Chanley, good evening.
Hey, Julie, this has to be one of the most memorable witnesses just because inside the courtroom, the jury showed their hand a little bit. The most reaction I've seen from the jury the entire trial for any witness happened during the cross-examination of Dr. David Spiegel. Now, on direct, what you just played, they had their chairs turned, they looked at him, occasional notes to his direct testimony. But once Depp's attorney, Wayne Dennison, started to question him, and the witness became argumentative, a bit defensive, interrupting. Even the judge seemed annoyed at times. The jury reacted. Let's play a part of that cross-examination.
As an expert witness, I have not acted unethically. By the way, for the record, intimate partner violence is not a psychiatric diagnosis. I'll start with that. Substance usage by themselves is not a psychiatric diagnosis. If you want to cut to the chase, psychiatry is not a diagnosis of that. Narcissistic personality traits is not a diagnosis. Ergo, I am basically commenting on the things that were brought to me, which are not diagnoses. But an evaluation, if I was going to treat a patient or anyone here, those are the steps I would take. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe you didn't say that, but I'm sure you did. And therefore, what I'm saying is neither IPV, nor substance usage, nor narcissistic personality traits a psychiatric diagnosis. And then under the rubric of expert witness testimony, you are saying I acted unethically under the rubric of expert witness testimony. So if you, sir, would like to proceed that expert witnesses are unethical, based on that, I am not going to sit here and disagree with you and waste everyone's time. I think it's fairly obvious.
And that was the crux of the cross. The main takeaway was that this expert, the defense contends, was that he diagnosed Johnny Depp with some things that he did not personally treat him or examine him for. But let's get back to the jury, Julie. They had looks of sometimes frustration, sometimes annoyance, sometimes skepticism at Dr. Spiegel. But overall, there were at least a couple that seemed entertained and would smile and even laugh at the commentary back and forth. It was quite a sight to see.
Oh, I bet. You know, speaking of entertainment, that courtroom was full of it today. Julie, I have to ask about that other moment this morning, the outburst in the gallery with that woman. You were in there for this. Tell us about it, please.
How wild was this moment? Now, these fans are lining up, I mean, almost 24 hours ahead of time to garner a seat inside the courtroom, and one woman took complete advantage of that. There was a mid-morning break, the jury left, and as usual, Johnny Depp turns to the crowd, waves, and they wave back. Well, this particular woman had a baby with her and said, "I love you, Johnny. Our souls are connected. When are you going to admit this baby is yours?" Well, she was promptly removed from the courtroom, her wristband removed, and she will not return to this courtroom. So just kind of a feel of how zealous sometimes the fans here showing up are.
Woo. Boy, that is really something. I just, you know, with this trial, you think you've seen it all today. Just come back to court tomorrow. Chandler, you know you're seeing it all out there. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so they've got her on the... I don't know, I guess the banned list from that courtroom. She won't be back. They'll be keeping an eye out for her. How about, when fast forwarding, so we hear from various experts throughout the day, and then Amber Heard's team really ending on a pretty strong note with that last witness, that entertainment industry consultant. For those viewers who may not have seen some of that, what were the big takeaways that stood out to you, please, Chanley?
You're sure. So Catherine Arnold was the witness, and she has years of experience in the entertainment business, and she spoke to the jury, of course, going towards Amber Heard's. It's time she has to prove some damages to her career. She's alleging and countersuing for defamation as well in this trial. And essentially, Miss Arnold told this jury that Amber Heard has lost around $45 to $50 million of potential work because of Johnny Depp's claims that she fabricated her abuse allegations. Let's take a listen to Ms. Arnold talk about this sort of social media harassment.
And how has the negative social media campaign been used against Amber Heard since the Depp-Waldman statements?
Great. So the negative campaign has been used both to, let's fire Amber off of Aquaman, to the product that she had an endorsement contract with was L'Oreal, the makeup. And every time that L'Oreal mentioned Amber Heard and the product together, they would get harassed. Her publicist company was harassed. Any kind of movie that she was related to or television project that she was related to got negative attention from the social media world. Even the charities that she was involved with were getting hammered, if you will, or bombarded by negative social media, which made it difficult to work with Amber on any level because negativity was brought to their product, service, or film.
So in addition to testifying about the potential harm to Amber Heard's career, Julie, she also talked about and assessed Johnny Depp's career downturn over the years, going towards Amber Heard's defense here, which is that it was Johnny Depp's own fault. It had nothing to do with that 2018 op-ed at issue here, but she pointed to erratic behavior, substance abuse issues showing up late for set, and other items that would cause his career to go down.
Wow, that fight over the damages, absolutely. Chanley Painter, thank you for all of that. I know we'll look forward to talking with you a little later in the show. Right now, I want to bring in my guest who's standing by in Los Angeles, California. She is a forensic psychiatrist. She's also testified as an expert witness at trials. She also writes a column. Dr. Carol Lieberman is on the show tonight. Hi, Dr. Carol. Thanks for being with us. Okay, so who better to ask than you about how Dr. David Spiegel did when he was testifying? Your thoughts, please.
Dr. Spiegel is an embarrassment to all expert witnesses.
What? Why?
Yes.
Whoa.
Well, first of all, it seems like they might have called central casting for someone who looks like a psychiatrist, but he was a caricature, really, in the end. With his comments, you would think that he really, I know theoretically he has worked as an expert witness before, but that's what he does primarily now. But But you would think he would know things like, yes, you have to answer that question when the attorney is asking you a question, and yet he turned to the judge and he said, do I have to answer that? I mean, and plus all of the things that he was saying, his body language, you know, he was moving his hands in this kind of all different ways. But a lot of it was like this at the jury, you know, like very aggressively. He was self-righteous. He was like, you know, don't dare to question me. And actually, that is a trap that a lot of expert witnesses fall into if they don't know what they're doing on cross. That you know, they think that they can, because they know more in psychiatry, of course, than the attorney. They think that they can somehow snow them in it, but he was really just acting defensive. He fell more and more into a defensive hole on cross. He sort of made his way through direct, but on cross he just got angry and made inappropriate comments, and he just lost it.
Well, so I think really what our viewers want to know is, when we're talking not about his performance or how he might have appeared, what we want to ask you about is the forensic psychiatry that he shared with the jury, the opinions that he formed based on the evidence that he reviewed. What did you think about his opinions, not the way he testified?
Well, I think, first of all, there was a number of things that he said that were just wrong. Like, for example, he was asked about some medications, about Seroquel, and he talked about that being used for sleep. Seroquel is an antipsychotic. Any psychiatrist who gives that to a patient to sleep is basically doing malpractice, because you don't use an antipsychotic, something with potentially very serious side effects, to help somebody to sleep. He did a lot of things, like he also talking about the drugs. He used the expression a lot about street drugs, or this is on the street, he kept saying, when he knew that, or he should have known, that Johnny Depp had a prescription. The diagnoses, the things that he said, you know, I'm not telling you a diagnosis. Well, substance abuse and even saying narcissistic personality traits is really a diagnosis. I mean, that he was kind of splitting hairs in that in the DSM-5, there isn't a specific number for traits per se, but that is a diagnosis to say that somebody has, you know, any kind of narcissistic traits, histrionic traits. That is basically making a diagnosis. So that didn't make any sense. Then when he talked about how, well, of course, the big one was when he talked about how he didn't get to examine Johnny Depp. That was the big deal. And he said that he had asked to examine him. Now, you know, the reason why the judge wouldn't have let Johnny Depp be examined, or wouldn't have made him be examined, is because he wasn't putting his mental, emotional distress damages in question.
Right.
Whereas Amber was. So there was no reason to agree to a mental exam. But, you know, the thing is, when people do that, I mean, I learned this early in my career as an expert, you know, if you don't examine the person, then of course, like I remember this traumatic event as an expert when the opposing attorney, I did a beautiful direct, and then the opposing attorney said, you know, that was you talked a lot about my client, and that was a very interesting theory that you had, and so on. But did you ever meet my client? It was after that now I will never testify about somebody who I have not had the chance to examine unless they're dead, unless I did ask the court to let me examine them and they refused, but with the caveat of saying at the beginning, I am basing my opinions on this, this, and this, and I didn't have the opportunity to examine the person, which would have, of course, made me able to formulate a better opinion. But he didn't do that. He didn't want to say that you know, there could be anything wrong, or that he didn't base his opinion on enough.
Yeah, well, so a lot to unpack there. One point I want to circle back to, and then we have to take a break, is that Amber Heard in the pleadings and what they're saying, you know, was part of, you know, the damage that she suffered at the hands of Johnny Depp and the abuse that she's alleging occurred was suffering from PTSD. And that's what Dr. Lieberman was just referencing. For anybody wondering at home, that was what she was referencing about the judge saying, well, Amber Heard put her mental health at issue by saying in the pleadings in this litigation that she's suffering from this, whereas Johnny Depp did not say he's suffering from anything. So that's why the court allowed for Amber Heard to be evaluated by an expert of the Depp's team choosing, Dr. Curry, Dr. Shannon Curry, who's going to be on the witness list. Well, she is on the witness list. We'll see if she's called on rebuttal in the Depp case. And we have to leave it there for now. But Dr. Carol Lieberman is going to stay with us. We're going to squeeze in a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the testimony that came up in court today regarding Johnny Depp's severed finger during his trip to Australia. So many questions about this. What do you think happened? Let us know. Share your thoughts with us. We want to hear it. We'll be right back with more closing arguments after this.
Dr. Moore, based on your analysis, did Mr. Depp's finger injury happen as a result of a vodka bottle being thrown at him?
Objection leading.
Overrule.
I'm sorry.
No.
That was not a leading question. A leading question suggests the answer. Keep that in mind the next time you see that listed as a basis for an objection in this trial. Welcome back to Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant, in tonight for Vinnie Politan. He needed the night off. So who we just saw there on the witness stand was Dr. Richard Moore. He was the first witness called this morning by Amber Heard's legal team to dispute the theory that Johnny Depp's finger was severed when Amber Heard threw a vodka bottle at him. But before we look at more of Dr. Moore's testimony, let's refresh our memories, shall we, with what Johnny Depp first told the jury.
I was leaning like this in the chair, looking at her. First bottle went, then I got the other bottle, shot. Takes the second bottle, which was the larger one. I'm in this position again, and my hand is on the edge of the bar, like that, you know, leaning over, the fingers like that, and she threw the large bottle, and it made contact and shattered everywhere. And I honestly didn't feel the pain at first at all. I felt no pain whatsoever. What I felt was, I felt heat. I felt heat, and I felt as if something were dripping down my hand, you know. And then I looked down and realized that the tip of my finger had been severed.
All right, I'm going to bring back in my guest now for some discussion. Still with me, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Carol Lieberman. Also joining me in Los Angeles, California, criminal defense attorney Lada Uretzian, and in Winchester, Virginia, body language expert who, by the way, specializes in micro expressions, Dr. Stephen Langston. Great to have you three on the show tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Stephen, want to go to you first, if I may, please. Looking at that video of Johnny Depp, how he testified, give us your assessments, if you would, kindly.
You know, Julie, Johnny Depp is such, when he's testifying, he is bringing us into his conversation. We've said this throughout the trial, that his hand motions, his body language in general, is putting us in the scene. I thought that testimony alone, when he mentioned the heat, I could almost feel that myself. Anyone who's had that kind of injury has been there, and so when he's telling this story, he's doing it. But if you watch his facial expressions really closely, his eyebrows tell a lot of stories, and he definitely goes from a point where he can feel the pain, his anger, his eyebrows are going in, he's going to the anger, and then he switches them back to that sadness, out of his normal resting state where his eyebrows go in and up like that, reflecting that sadness. And if you watch Amber, her lack of emotions is saying a lot on that portion as well. But you know, Johnny's got he's a great character. He's a great story. He's definitely a great actor. He can pull us in. That entire thing, I could feel it. I could see it. I could visualize there. A big difference from the other testimonies. Even when he's talking about the way Amber grabs the bottle, he does this rapid motion like this. You can almost feel that bottle and hear it being yanked off a bar. He absolutely brings us into a story with his language.
He does. And Dr. Stephen, I think one of the things many of us have struggled with in assessing his testimony and Amber Heard's testimony is that they're actors. I mean, Johnny Depp, the reason he's got all these fans coming out day in and day out for him is because he's an actor. He's a great actor and people love his work. When you're watching him here in this story, just this story, the last clip we played and all the talk about the incident with the vodka bottle, in your view, is he being truthful?
You know, well, for one, it's tough. You know, when you're looking at baselines, what makes this so difficult from a body language perspective is you have to look at baselines and the baseline deviations, where it changes from its normal resting state. The thing about big predominant actors like this, like Johnny Depp, is that when you see his baseline, you go off the characters that he has created. Some people think you know, these Disney characters. I personally think 21 Jump Street, but you have this vision that you put in his head of what he is. And what they've done, they've coached him very well, where he is not performing that character role. He is absolutely closed in fact, this position that you're seeing right now, where he's stretched out, that very alpha position, not his normal resting place of where he's been throughout this this entire trial. Every time you see him, he's hunched over, he's got his head down. I know he's not trying to make eye contact. He's writing. I'd love to see what he's writing on that paper, but he's very closed up. Very different from his traditional characters that are larger than life, very animated. His eyes are wide open. He's just playing a much different role, and I think it makes him where he is very believable in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he testified very well, I think, by all accounts. I would say he was very measured. He was very slow speaking, and most of his testimony clearly very thoughtful in his answers. Lada Uretzian, let me go to you, please. And I really want you to kind of take a position here, if you would be so kind to do that. You do criminal defense work. You're no stranger to high-profile cases. Here with this story with the finger that Johnny Depp is telling as the plaintiff, we know Amber Heard's team is defending it. We saw much of that done today with the offering of the testimony of the orthopedic surgeon who's saying, no way this injury happened the way he says it did. How do you make those arguments in close to the jury?
Obviously, the first thing I would do is mention or focus on my client. I'm talking about Johnny Depp at this point and how truthful he was, how he was explaining how it happened in detail, including down to feeling the heat and the dripping and his reaction to noticing what happened to his finger. What I would focus on also is the expert that the other party has brought in. Now, how would this expert really know? I understand that he's had surgeries and he's seen, individuals who have had injuries or similar injuries in similar situations, but each one is different, right? Every single one of those injuries that his patients have had would have happened under different circumstances. Does he know how she hurled that bottle? Does he know specifically or exactly what position his finger was in? Yes, he describes it, but again, there's slight movements could make a difference. So the idea that he was testifying as a know-it-all, oh, this could not have happened. There would have been pieces of glass in his on his body somewhere else. We would have found it. None of that, I think, is very strong or credible, and his jury is going to be able to cut through it. And in closing, I would say he wasn't in the best position to give this particular opinion. A doctor who had maybe seen the finger at the point on that day, operated on it, maybe would have been in a better position. But again, he's not in a good position to be able to give this type of opinion.
Gotcha. Lada Uretzian, Dr. Carol Lieberman, Dr. Stephen Langston, thank you all so much. My guests are going to stay with me. We want you to do the same at home. We just need to hit a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at the big picture. What is this case really about, and what are the facts that we know about the physical altercations between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard? This is Closing Arguments. Don't go away.
instantly.
Welcome back to Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant. Vinnie has the night off. The defamation trial between celebrity exes Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is heading into its final stretch. And while Depp clearly seems to be winning in the court of public opinion, Amber Heard just needs the jury to believe that at least one of the alleged incidents of violence that she's described for them is true. So, what we want to do now is take a look back together at some of the biggest and most violent fights that have been described between the couple. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter reports.
I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a baby.
In this defamation trial, both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard voiced their claims of physical violence that occurred throughout their tumultuous 15-month marriage.
It was a very violent, chaotic, at times very loving, emotional relationship. Unfortunately, the violence became almost normal, especially towards the end.
Miss Heard, in her frustration and in her rage and her anger, she would strike out. It could begin with a slap. It could begin with a shove. It could begin with, throwing a TV remote at my head.
A lot has been alleged in their physical confrontations with each other, like a slap.
And he just whacks me in the face. I suspected I had a broken nose.
A kick.
I feel this boot in my back. He just kicked me.
A punch.
Bam. And then I just said, is that what you wanted?
Well, he busted my lip when he punched me. It's bleeding in this picture.
A headbutt.
And he balled up his fist, leaned back, and headbutted me square in the nose. Just searing pain.
Things thrown at each other.
She walked up to me and reached and grabbed the bottle of vodka. And then just kind of stood back and then hurled it at me.
Just pulls his arm back with the foam and throws it at my face.
And even defecation.
Fecal matter on the bed. Tried to blame it on the dogs.
According to Amber Heard, the fighting started early in the relationship.
At first, it was indirect, and then it became really direct. Then the punching of the walls next to my head, which was a constant at that time in 2012. It would escalate to the point where he would push me or shove me down, and then I'd get back up.
In May 2014, a private plane ride got bumpy mid-flight.
I was looking out of the window, and he slaps my face. And his friend is in our proximity. And it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed. He just kicked me in the back. And I fell to the floor. I caught myself on the floor, and I just felt like I was looking at the floor of the plane felt like a long time.
In March 2015, just a month after they were married, Johnny Depp recalls an alleged violent encounter with Amber Heard. The result, a part of his finger severed.
She threw the large bottle, and it made contact and shattered everywhere. The tip of my finger had been severed. I was looking directly at my bone sticking out. Blood was just pouring out. I don't know what a nervous breakdown feels like, but that's probably the closest that I've ever been.
Amber agrees the fight was violent, but she claims Depp was the abusive one.
I could just feel this pressure. It was like it kept hitting him. It didn't feel pain. It was just a pressure on my pubic bone.
Later that same month, another alleged attack. This one occurred near the staircase of their downtown Los Angeles penthouse.
This took place on the landing, trying to get to me, trying to hit me. And then Whitney, her sister, was there. When she was in between us, Amber snuck in she reached, got the roundhouse in and
I swung at him. In all of my relationship to date with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow. And I, for the first time, hit him.
On May 21st, 2016, another domestic incident prompted a visit from police. Hurd claimed Depp threw a phone at her, hitting her in the face. These pictures were taken while she was at the courthouse, waiting for a restraining order.
When you filed the domestic violence temporary restraining order, how many acts of abuse did you allege at that time?
I gave the last couple, I believe. Last two incidents, maybe three.
It was enough to get a restraining order, but the jury will have to decide if it's enough to win the defamation case against Johnny Depp.
All right, that was Shanley Painter reporting there. Let me bring in one of my guests on the program tonight. She practices criminal defense work in Los Angeles, attorney Lada Uretzian. Okay, Lada, one thing about being a trial attorney is you're able to look at any side of the case and make it your own and make arguments for that side. And here at Court TV, you know, we're not on anybody's team. We're not on Team Depp. We're not on Team Hurd. We're on Team Court TV, facts, law. We call balls and strikes. So I asked you in the last segment to take a position. I want you to do the same for me in this segment. This time you're representing Amber Heard. Last time you were talking about representing Johnny Depp. So here with all of these incidents of alleged abuse in this trial, right? There have been so many that Amber Heard has put forth into the record that it's really hard to even keep count. But looking at the United Kingdom case as an example, there were 14 there. The judge found 12 of them substantially true. So really, she only has to be believed on one in order to have Johnny Depp's claim against her that what she wrote in the Washington Post was untrue. So his claim would fail. So if even if he hit her just once, that makes what she said true. I could have said that more eloquently, but you know what I'm saying, Lada. So how do you make that argument to the jury? How do you get them to understand that even one punch would make her a victim of domestic violence and not make that op-ed false, as is alleged?
You would basically say exactly that. You would tell the jury that you've heard her testify. She hasn't talked about one incident, but she's talked about 14, 15, whatever the number is. And you could see the impact, even when she's testifying, of what she has lived through, whether it was an embarrassing moment or was it a painful moment, was it, you know, and there was also photographs with injuries. Even if you don't believe or you think that maybe she was an instigator on one of these incidents or two of these incidents or even 10 of these incidents, if there was one incident where you believe that she was not the instigator and she was on the receiving end, and Mr. Depp, whether it be a push, a slap, a pulling of the hair, spitting, whatever it may be, it could be something small. If he did anything that could be described or seen under the law as domestic violence, then she has to win. That's all it takes. One push, one slap. That's it. That's all they need to believe.
And the burden is very low. It's much lower than what attorneys like you are used to working with. You're used to beyond a reasonable doubt. A lot of the highest burden the law allows in criminal court. Here, another reminder, we're in civil court, so the threshold is much lower. Lada Uretzian, always great to talk with you. Thank you kindly for all of that analysis, for going along, taking the various positions to give us an idea of the arguments we might be seeing very soon here this week. Also, a big thank you to my other guests, Dr. Carol Lieberman and Dr. Stephen Langston. Thank you to all of you for coming on the show tonight. We look forward to seeing you all back here soon. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the action that's been happening at the Fairfax County Courthouse. You know those diehard Depp fans? They spend the night there all to get one of the wristbands to get in the courtroom to watch the trial. Well, there were some fights last night. We'll get you a live report from Virginia right after this.
other people. No, I don't know who came up with this phony baloney number system. That's gonna end right now. You want to see Johnny Depp, then you sit your in the chair all night, just like everybody else. Oh, I was here at 4 o'clock in the morning last week, and there were people doing it.
Okay, they said tonight, not last week.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm here, and it's not 1 o'clock yet, so you really shouldn't be lining up.
Guess what? We've been here for hours.
All right, then everybody out of line and come back at 1 o'clock. Let's make this fair right now.
Who are you?
I'm a woman, and I deserve it should be fair.
Ooh, we need a referee there. That was just a look at some of the fans who lined up at the courthouse last night. As you can see, things have really started to heat up among those diehard Depp fans, all trying to get the wristbands to get a seat inside the courtroom or in the overflow room to watch the trial. Let me bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who's live outside the courthouse to tell us some more. Chanley, what happened?
Hey, Julie, I heard it described by one of those in line as the Hunger Games last night, it seemed, to try to save a spot. And we're watching video. You notice the baby buggy. That was the woman that I told you about earlier who had that little outburst inside the courtroom about the baby. Well, it was quite unruly all night long, so that now the sheriff's deputies are really putting in some precautions in place to help prevent that type of situation. They've really abandoned their patrolling to make sure no line is even formed until 1 a.m. tonight. Otherwise, I would be out there showing you all the people in line, but there's none out there in line right now because of what happened last night. But let's take a little bit of a closer look because videos, of course, have surfaced of the potential incident last night. There was a TikTok video posted on Twitter. Here's a look to give you an idea.
Come here. Come here. What's going on? All right. You can't shove your
Okay,
come here.
body onto me. That's ridiculous.
All right.
So as you can imagine, as I was speaking to those this morning, all day today, really, in the gallery who waited, they were still talking about what happened and really disturbed about what happened. We caught up with one of those who witnessed that ordeal. Let's listen.
Lined up very nicely here, and starting at 7 in the morning, and everything was very nice until somebody started making a ruckus and cutting line. The police came and chased us out, and we had to come back in at 1 in the morning. Once we came in back at 1 in the morning, everybody just clumped up, right? So everybody didn't want to lose their space, so there's a clump of people like about 10 thick against the wall going back about, 100 feet. And in the middle of this, one guy came in and cut the line and insisted to be there. He would not move. And he just packed himself in there. And it was so tight there, everybody was like sitting nicely, trying to, get their space and wait until the morning to get their ticket. This guy would not move. And this guy ended up just inchy. He was literally sitting on a girl's face. Mm-hmm. The girl was here and he had his butt right here. Mm-hmm. The girl at some point just lost it. All I heard is this big commotion.
Well, something else. We talked to other people overnight. One of our new photographers, Justin, is out and about in the early morning hours, Julie, and he talked to even one man who gave up his spot to prevent a fight. It wasn't worth it. It's just really wild and bizarre to be here and experience it, and the links that people will go to try to get a seat and watch this in person.
Right. And I want to kind of go back to something else you said to kind of put it all together as we're closing out this hour of closing arguments. You said the woman with the stroller in line having that fight would later become the woman earlier this morning. That woman right there with the stroller was the woman who yelled out to Johnny Depp something to the effect like, our souls are connected, and when are you going to acknowledge that this baby is yours?
Yes, she had the baby in the gallery with her, Julie. What a moment that was. Thankfully, the jury was out of the room, and Johnny Depp was walking out of the room as well. But people were talking about that and booing her after she was doing that, too.
Oh, I bet. Oh, my goodness. So now we know what she looks like. We got the video of her. Who knew that was, going to happen today? We got the video last night. Chanley Painter, thank you so much for all of that. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, it's time for the think tank to join me here on Closing Arguments.
mgc.edu.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the final week of the trial of Johnny Depp versus ex-wife Amber Heard is underway in Fairfax County, Virginia. And today, Amber Heard's legal team calls expert witnesses to strengthen her case, alleging that she is a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Johnny Depp.
And Dr. Moore, in your decades of practice, have you ever seen an injury associated with a glass explosion that was focused on the end of a single finger in the way Mr. Depp describes?
Well, not consistent with the clinical images and the findings in this case, no.
Polysubstance abuse is the use of 3 or more substances. And I answer, like I said, concurrently, he was, even while I was getting ready for rehab.
And we'll take a look at the list of possible witnesses to be called for Johnny Depp's rebuttal case. Will the jury be hearing from Kate Moss?
I don't hesitate. I don't wait. I just, in my head, instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him.
In Austin, Texas, a search is underway for the suspect involved in the murder of a pro cyclist. The arrest warrant is pointing to a possible love triangle. We have the latest. Plus, Dr. Richard Moore testified Johnny Depp could not have injured his finger the way he says he did. So tonight, we ask you, the 13th juror, what do you think happened? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. It is great to see you this Monday night here on Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant, in tonight for Vinnie Politan. Amber Heard's case in chief is winding down in the trial of dueling defamation cases in Virginia. Today, Heard's legal team called several expert witnesses to the stand to bolster her case that she was in fact a victim of abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp, and not the way around as Johnny Depp is claiming. That is, of course, their position. The Depp team previously, and we know Johnny Depp previously testified that Amber Heard's the one who threw a bottle of vodka at him during a trip to Australia. When the bottle shattered, Depp testified that he lost part of his finger. Well, this morning, the Heard team called an orthopedic surgeon to testify that, in his opinion, Depp could not have sustained the injury in that way he described to the jury. Let's take a listen to some of the testimony from Dr. Moore.
Dr. Moore, I believe you mentioned just a few minutes ago that there were other pictures that showed more of the nail. Is this one of those pictures?
Yes.
And explain to the jury again, and I'm sorry for the graphic nature of this photo, but it's important that the jury understands the basis for your opinion that a bottle couldn't have caused this coming in from above.
Yeah, so it's again, the mechanism described would have almost certainly led to severe nail injury. You know, I see no subungual hematoma. Again, it's a palmar tissue loss, and the loss is from distal to proximal, which is from the tip back far below the nail. And so for it to create that tissue loss down there would almost certainly have to be injury dorsally with that described mechanism.
So what you're saying is that something coming from the top could not have left a nail intact and yet caused injury from the tip of the finger underneath the nail.
Objection leading.
Overruled.
You can answer.
So I believe that with the mechanism described, that if the bottle struck the nail, there would have certainly been an injury to the nail bed, and in order for the soft tissue injury to be created by that mechanism, there would have almost certainly been tissue loss on the top of the finger as well.
And based on the pictures that you reviewed of Mr. Depp's finger injury, you cannot determine what particular object caused the injury to his finger. Yes?
Well, I can't determine exactly what object did it. I think that I can say with confidence that the described mechanism of the bottle hitting and shattering the finger was not consistent with the appearance of the injury.
I understand that. My question is just very specific. You can't determine the object that caused the injury to Mr. Depp's finger.
Well, it's a little bit more of a non-specific answer. I mean, I can't determine the exact object, but I can determine that it's unlikely that it was sustained in the manner described.
You can't definitively say what caused the injury to Mr. Depp's fingers. Yes or no?
No.
All right, let me bring in my think tank for some discussion now. Joining us from Stamford, Connecticut, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland, and in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to have you both on the show tonight. Thank you for being with me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this finger injury, starting with the direct examination. And Darnell, I'd like to go to you on this one. Did the DEP team do the job that was needed to be done today, making the jury convinced that there's no way that injury happened from the vodka bottle, as Johnny Depp said?
Well, actually, the way the evidence rolled out was whether the mechanism as to what caused the injury could have been said with an absolute certainty. And Dr. Moore was trying to explain that based on what he's seen, a bottle could not have caused that type of injury because it would have had to struck the nail, and then you would have had damage to the nail and then roll over to the soft tissue. And counsel for Depp, she did her best to try to pin him down to saying, no, I cannot say with absolute certainty what caused it, but I just think it just didn't come in that well. I think the jury's probably going to disregard this whole charade that took place today, because I don't think with scientific certainty, either side added anything to what the jury has to consider.
Okay, so on direct exam, was there something in particular lacking in your view, Darnell? Was there something they didn't do to get the point across?
I think the idea here is that if you look at what the testimony has been so far over these last couple of weeks, is that Johnny Depp's finger was damaged by a certain object that Amber threw at him. And that was the only thing that they was trying to say on direct examination, to say, well, that could not have happened this way. And so the doctor gave some testimony as to what he thinks an injury should look like if it was struck with a bottle, in the way in the way Depp's team has said. And I just think that when the cross-examination came, it sort of tried to cancel out, well, you can't say what hit his finger, can you? No, I could not. And so I just think it just didn't come across crystal to me.
Okay, let's take a look at the forensic psychiatrist who then testified. He took the stand, talked about Johnny Depp's substance abuse problems, also talked about intimate partner violence. That's an area of expertise for him. His name's Dr. David Spiegel. He testified that Johnny Depp exhibits behavior that is consistent with that of someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence. Take a look.
In my opinion, based on my review of the evidence, based on my clinical experience, based on my publishing experience, based on my teaching experience, that Mr. Depp has behaviors that are consistent with both someone who has a substance use disorder as well as consistent behaviors for someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence.
All right, I'm going to bring in attorney Jennifer Brandt on this one. She practices family law in Philadelphia. So Jennifer, tell me, when you're listening to this expert's testimony, and he's talking about, the context of their relationship, what went on, all of the evidence he was able to review. Tell me what you thought in terms of the narrative conveyed to the jury. Was he effective? And essentially what he wanted to convey was that Johnny Depp is someone who has behavior that is consistent with someone who commits intimate partner violence.
Julie, I think he started out effective and he was pretty good on direct. I mean, he seems credible, he seems believable, he seems experienced for sure. But when it got to cross-examination, which we didn't see yet, he just fell apart. He became very argumentative. He was just sort of obnoxious. I think that's the best way to sum it up. And I think it really worked against him. I just think going out of this and going away from this witness, people are just thinking, boy, this guy, he was really difficult. And that's what they're going to remember, I think, more than what he really had to say in his direct exam and all the things he was saying about intimate partner violence and Johnny's substance abuse issues, et cetera. I think people are just going to say, boy, that guy was difficult.
Yeah, and we have a couple clips of that. I'm glad you brought up the cross because we want to show that, you know, he also gave some testimony about how survivors of domestic violence can certainly suffer from mental health problems following the abuse. And that's why counseling is always, you know, recommended to get through that period after leaving a violent relationship. And so we want to take a look at some of that.
He didn't examine Johnny either, you know, so I think that was a downfall. So, you know, I think he's talking about records that he reviewed, and it's always more difficult if you don't have that direct examination of the witness. I think it's hard to, you know, build on his credibility when he hasn't even met Johnny and hasn't really talked to Johnny.
Right.
So I think that also harmed his testimony.
Right, and important to point out too, that was through no fault of his own, not for a lack of wanting to do it. It was because the court would not order it. And without a court order, Johnny Depp can say, you know, go fly a kite. I'm not allowing you to evaluate me. And so, you know, who knows how it went down, but maybe something like that. Let's play those clips. We want to take a look at two different clips, and we're going to see some of the cross-examination in the second one.
Do survivors of intimate partner violence experience mental health issues?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So survivors of intimate partner violence, and by the way, I should start out by saying, we don't expect, in psychiatry, we don't expect our victims to be perfect. We don't expect our victims to be unscathed by what they've received. So starting with that, okay, it is not unusual as survivors to see substance use, substance abuse, substance-induced symptoms, chronic depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, or subsyndromal post-traumatic stress disorder along the lines of battered wife syndrome, and some emotional unpredictability. And again, you are a victim here.
Psychiatrists are ethically prohibited from evaluating individuals without permission or other authorization, such as a court order. That's the rule, right?
Again, if you're reading that, then I have to believe you're not misrepresenting it. And I would come back to, again, then this whole thing on we might as well get rid of all the expert witnesses we've had throughout all of time for court proceedings. Because what you're saying is unless a court orders it, and that's what you just said, or the APA said, then therefore expert witnesses cannot do an evaluation based on an observation of the medical records. Insurance companies cannot do evaluations solely based on medical records where their doctors rendering professional opinions. So at the end of the day, you are essentially saying that unless someone has directly evaluated it, this whole medical system we have, this whole legal system we have is null and void.
Okay, so got to see a little bit of the cross-examination there. I mean, boy, oh boy, did that testimony get the attention of the jury. I want to know what you think about that. Darnell, let me go to you first. How did you think he held up on the cross?
I agree with Attorney Brandt. You don't want to be arguing with the attorneys. You leave that to both attorneys, if you would. If you understand, you want to come across as just credible. You want to stay with the text that you're an expert in, and leave the arguments for the attorneys. He came across a bit argumentative, and one thing I did pick up on, and I made a note of that, they started to talk automatically about survivors having mental health issues. And it's too early in the game, or probably too late in the game, depending on how you look at it, for Amber's team to now be showing mitigation, saying that she has mental health issues and this is why she might have been drinking. This is why she behaved that way. I think that that's going down a slippery slope. So I think that didn't come across too good for him, and I just think he was a bit argumentative.
Why do you say it's too late in the game, Darnell? I'm curious.
Because if the idea here is that you should own your behavior, you shouldn't start saying that the way Amber behaved, drinking or using drugs or being violent, was because she's a survivor of violence. So therefore she has some mental health issues. And they just sprinkled it in. They didn't really even go into it and explain to the jury what that means. They just said, could survivors of this type of intimate partner violence exhibit mental health issues? And they left it alone. And to me, that sounds like they're trying to say there was some mitigation here for her behavior.
That's an interesting interpretation of it, because the way I was viewing it, I thought he was referencing the PTSD, which they did present early on in this case. And just a reminder, they're still in her case in chief, but that's what I thought that was a reference to when he was talking about that. Jennifer Brandt, give me your thoughts on this. Is there anything better counsel could have done with him, in your view, on the cross-examination?
I think cross-examination, I didn't think the counsel had to do much because he started arguing right away, which was a problem for him. I think, you know, it seems like he's definitely testified before. He seems very experienced, but somebody should have probably coached him a little bit better to handle the cross-examination and not argue with the attorney, because as I said, that was a huge distraction. The jury apparently, you know, looked at that. They were, you know, sort of looking at him with skepticism after he was testifying. And I just think it really hurt. It hurt his testimony. It hurt the case. And it kind of, you lost the message with him, because once he starts arguing and just his attitude, you know, I know he was trying to prove a point, and I think he was a bit insulted by being, you know, sort of challenged. But he's a witness, and he should be ready for this, and he should have just held his cool and handled this a little bit better. I think it would have been a lot more effective. So I think counsel did a great job in cross-examination because they got him ruffled. They must have known what buttons to push, and they got him going a bit.
All right, thank you both for your opinions, and we want your opinions at home. Tweet us at Court TV. Let us know what you think of that cross-examination of that expert witness. He certainly livened it up today in the courtroom, that's for sure. And some of the jurors were entertained by it. Some of them were smiling, kind of laughing at points. So let us know what you think at home. We're going to take a quick break. The think tank is going to stay with me for the whole hour tonight. We'll be right back with a look at some possible witnesses in Johnny Depp's rebuttal case. That's next.
day.
But I'm standing up there talking, I'm standing up there, I'm at the top of the stairs with my back to the stairs. And that's when Johnny runs up the stairs. And again, I'm facing Amber. He comes up behind me, strikes me in the back, kind of just somewhere over here. He strikes me in the back. I hear Amber shout, "Don't hit my sister." She smacks him, lands one. And then he grabs, at that point, that's when Travis runs up the stairs after Amber landed one. But by that time, Johnny had already grabbed Amber by the hair with one hand and was whacking her repeatedly in the face with the other as I was standing there.
That was Whitney Henriquez, Amber Heard's sister, testifying about a physical fight she claimed she witnessed between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, a fight that happened at their Los Angeles penthouse. Whitney, we know, was called by Amber Heard's legal team during Heard's case in chief, and we're learning today from a source who's close to the Depp team that some of the witnesses expected to be called in his rebuttal case could provide some further testimony about the alleged staircase incident. So take a look at this. This is the list of possible rebuttal witnesses, including Johnny Depp himself, Jennifer Howell, that friend of Whitney Henriquez, and Johnny Depp's former girlfriend, supermodel Kate Moss. Now, if you remember, during Amber Heard's testimony, she said she recalled thinking about Kate Moss when she thought Depp might push her sister down the stairs. Here's a look back at what she said, and pay close attention, to Depp's legal team's reaction.
I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just, in my head, instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him. In all of my relationship to date with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow.
Okay, there. So we were sort of trying to kind of read the tea leaves there with that reaction, and we figured they must have some evidence that they want to present, right? Something to refute that. And here we understand that could be in the form of testimony from Kate Moss, perhaps, herself. That also could be in the form of some testimony from this friend of Whitney Heard Henriquez's, Jennifer Howell. Although that testimony may be harder to get in because we understand she wrote a letter and there would be a big hearsay problem with that. Let me bring in my guests now. In the think tank we have tonight, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to see you both. Okay, so when we think about who might be able to shed some light on the staircase incident, Kate Moss, supermodel, big name. Darnell, tell me, what do you think about that? What kind of effect her testimony might have with the jury if she says something like, yeah, it never happened to me?
Yeah, well, the whole idea with rebuttal is that I think you shouldn't use it unless you specifically are going after something that's monumental. Just because you can rebut doesn't mean you should rebut everything. And watching this trial unravel, I was wondering whether they should even use their rebuttal time. And when Amber mentioned Kate Moss, she didn't specifically say in a whole comprehensive sentence what was important about Kate Moss. She said something Kate Moss. It was almost disjunctive. And then the lawyer just gave the O.J. Simpson fist pump that Johnny Cochran did for the not guilty verdict. And then I was wondering, okay, maybe he's up to something, but he didn't follow through with that. So we have to wait and see. If what he's going to prove is that Kate Moss was never there, or Amber is just floating this name out there and it has no point, then I think the jury is going to be affected in a positive way for Johnny if they could show that she lacks credibility, because this whole thing is about credibility. So I'm waiting to see myself.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Are you saying you wouldn't call Kate Moss to rebut that? Do you not think it's significant enough to call her as a witness?
No, I'm saying that if in fact the plaintiff, which is Johnny Depp's team, if in fact the plaintiffs are saying specifically Kate Moss is going to debunk something, then call her. If it's just going to call her without a specific item that they're trying to debunk, then I wouldn't call her. So they have to make sure that they're not just calling people and wasting time.
Oh yeah, they would be asking her about whether or not he pushed her down the stairs. So
yeah, well, that's the thing.
In that case, then it'd be a yes, right?
It would be yes, but when Amber was testifying, she didn't say, Kate Moss witnessed this happen and Kate Moss this, and I said, hey, Kate Moss grabbed me, or she didn't flush it out. She just said Kate Moss, sort of disjunctively, and they said yes.
Right.
And so I'm like,
they
okay,
knew it was
what are
the
they talking
reference.
about?
Right, something that's being discussed in the court of public opinion and has been, long before this litigation was brewing. Okay, let's take a look at some of these possible other rebuttal witnesses. And then, Jennifer, I want to talk to you about this one. So we understand there are 16 names on the DEP list. Here are a few other ones that stood out to us. Candy Davidson Goldbraun, a representative for the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. Walter Hamada, the president of a DC-based film productions. Warner Brothers, and Dr. David Kalber, DEP's hand doctor. Okay, let's stop right there. The hand doctor. Jennifer Brandt, what do you think after what we saw today with the DEP expert witness, the orthopedic surgeon who testified this morning? There's no way that vodka bottle caused the injury. What do you think? Should they call this doctor to refute that?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to do that, because I think it would bring in another opinion. Obviously, the doctor is going to come in and say, absolutely, the vodka bottle could have caused this injury, and he'll talk about his experience and why he believes that it was the vodka bottle. I mean, honestly, I think this whole point about how Johnny's finger was severed is a confusing point for everybody, because we all sit here wondering how, if you throw a vodka bottle, how that can sever somebody's finger. But, you had the doctor today say that, he didn't believe it was the vodka bottle, but he didn't know what it was. Now you'll have Johnny Depp's doctor come in and say, you know what, I think it was the vodka bottle, or it could possibly be the vodka bottle. So I think that puts sort of that issue to rest. And, I agree with Darnell in terms of rebuttal. I don't think they should prolong the rebuttal case, but I think the Kate Moss issue is a big one, because, I mean, she did say, or in the past there had been discussion of whether Johnny had pushed her down the stairs, and I see with the fist pumping and the excitement by Johnny Depp's lawyers, I assume Kate Moss will come in and say, you know what, that didn't ever happen. He never pushed me. He was a great boyfriend. We had a good relationship, or something to that effect. She's going to turn things around, and I think that'll be very powerful, especially on rebuttal, because it'll be Johnny's, last word on this, and I think it would end on a good note if they brought her in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too. I think that would be very strong for them. We have a couple more names. I'm sorry?
I just want to add one thing. Candace Davidson is going to be a very strong rebuttal witness, because there was a lot to talk about whether there was a pledge or a donation of this divorce settlement of $7 million. So Amber played games with that. But if Miss Davidson from the Children's Hospital comes in and says, we never got any money of any kind from Amber Heard from a divorce settlement or any other kind of monies, that's going to go directly towards her credibility. And I think that Miss Davidson would be a great rebuttal witness to put that to bed.
All right, let's look at the other ones we have here. I want to get through this list before we have to take a break. All right, so we have Dr. Kimberly Collins, forensic pathologist, is also on the list. We have Morgan Knight, witness of the Hicksville incident. We have Lydia Phillip, flight attendant. Oh, that flight where he allegedly kicked her in the back. That was a very bad incident, so perhaps she may testify to that. These were the other names that stood out to us. And again, something with a witness list, you both know, you both do trial work. They could call none of them. It's just in an abundance of caution. You get your subpoenas out, you have your list ready. And of course, Johnny Depp. I mean, we know he's on this list. So we know he might be recalled by his team to refute one thing or multiple things. There was a lot of buzz today. Before we have to hit a break, I wanted to ask you both about something. There was a lot of buzz. There was some word that some of our Court TV team got that Johnny Depp was going to be called by Amber Heard's team. I have said, publicly before when I've been interviewed about this, that would be a terrible idea for them to call him. I was, pretty shocked that that was what was being floated out there by some sources very close to the Heard team. And so there was a lot of buzz about this today, and we saw today he was not, in fact, called. Can either of you, I want to ask you both this question. Darnell, I'll go to you first on this. Do you see any utility whatsoever in the Heard team calling him before they rest?
Julie, I agree with you 100%. The last thing you want is the voice of the opposition. That he's not going to help them. He's not going to clean anything up for them. They're not going to make him look bad. They couldn't do it in the first time. They're not going to do it now. Just leave him to rest.
Right. Jennifer, do you agree as well?
I agree 100%. I think it would be a huge mistake to call him. I was surprised that they were even talking about it. Nothing he's going to say is going to help them. It'll only hurt them, and just let it be. I mean, if he comes in on rebuttal, there's nothing they can do about that, but you certainly don't want to call him in their case in chief.
Right, to give him that opportunity. That would not be good. All right, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brandt, thank you both so much. We're going to squeeze in a break. When we come back, our think tank returns, and we're going to be bringing you another big story that we're following here at Court TV, a nationwide manhunt for Caitlin Armstrong, who's accused of killing a professional cyclist who was allegedly having a relationship with her boyfriend at one time. Joy Lim Nakrin will be here to break down all the details for us when Closing Arguments continues.
The fan base was very energized by Mr. Is it the Depp Wald?
Yeah, let me just ask
Depp Waldman. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. There's a lot in my brain right now.
It doesn't matter. Why don't I do this? Let me formulate a different question. How has the negative social media campaign been used against Amber Heard since the Depp Waldman statements?
Great. So the negative campaign has been used both to, let's fire Amber off of Aquaman, to the product that she had an endorsement contract with was L'Oreal, the makeup. And every time that L'Oreal mentioned Amber Heard and the product together, they would get harassed. Her publicist company was harassed. Any kind of movie that she was related to or television project that she was related to got negative attention from the social media world. Even the charities that she was involved with were getting hammered, if you will, or bombarded by negative social media, which made it difficult to work with Amber on any level because negativity was brought to their product, service, or film.
Okay. And is that negative social media campaign ongoing to this day?
Yes.
All right, welcome back to Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant, in tonight for Vinnie Politan. It has been an interesting day in Fairfax County, Virginia, in the dueling defamation trial of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And of course, we're going to continue breaking down all the biggest moments shortly. But first, we have a very special report for you tonight. Another major case we're following here at Court TV about a love triangle that allegedly led to murder. I want to bring in Court TV legal correspondent Joy Lim-Nakrin. She is in the studio tonight with the details. Joy.
Julie, great to be with you this evening. So right now, as we speak, authorities are searching for the woman they say killed an elite cyclist in this sordid love triangle. Investigators say she killed this woman, professional cyclist, 25-year-old Anna Mariah Wilson. Wilson was found dead in an Austin, Texas home earlier this month, just days ahead of a race in Waco that she was set to compete in. Well, now authorities are searching for her suspected killer, this woman, 24-year-old Caitlin Marie Armstrong, who is still at large right now. Armstrong and her boyfriend, another professional cyclist, Colin Strickland, they split for a period of time last fall, during which time he then became involved with the victim here. That's all according to the arrest warrant obtained by the Austin American-Statesman. Now, the boyfriend, Strickland, then later got back together with the suspect, but told authorities that he maintained a relationship with the victim at the same time. Now, the arrest warrant reads in part, quote, Strickland advised while he and Wilson were dating. Armstrong called Wilson on the phone, telling Wilson she was the one who was dating Strickland. Strickland told Detective Spittler he has had to change Wilson's name in his phone so Armstrong doesn't know who he's speaking to as they continue their relationship. And Strickland admitted he had to change Wilson's name in his phone because Armstrong had blocked Wilson's number in Strickland's phone. Strickland also advised he has had to delete text messages on his phone to prevent Armstrong from finding them. Now, Strickland told authorities that he picked up the victim on his motorcycle the day of the murder. They went swimming, they went to eat, and about a minute after he drops her off, surveillance video actually shows a vehicle appearing to match Armstrong's parked outside the victim's home. So that vehicle is a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a Texas license plate LDZ 5608. If you've seen it or you've seen this woman, Armstrong, you are asked to call the U.S. Marshal's Office. If you have a pen, the number is 800-336-0102. And Julie, the man here in this love triangle, Strickland, says that he is cooperating with authorities, but obviously the suspect, Armstrong, still on the run.
Whoa, this is awful, Joy. Oh, my goodness. Well, everybody got a good look at her with those pictures. I mean, we'll see what happens. I always say the marshals are good.
Yeah.
If they're looking for somebody, they will find them. Boy, oh boy, thank you for staying late tonight. Joy Lim-Nakrin in the studio with that special report. We are going to squeeze in a break. When we come back, it'll be time for you, our 13th juror, to sound off. Tonight, we were asking you about whether or not the surgeon who testified today in the Depp defamation trial changed your mind about how Johnny Depp severed his finger in Australia. We'll break down your reactions coming up next. But as we go to break, let's take a look back at how Johnny Depp told the jury he lost the tip of his finger.
I stood up and I walked behind the bar, and there was a larger bottle of vodka, the kind with the handle, on it. I grabbed that and I went and I sat in my seat again. I opened the bottle and I poured myself a shot. Drank it. Miss Heard was flinging insults left, right, and center, and she then grabbed that bottle and threw that at me. Threw the large bottle, and it made contact and shattered everywhere. And I honestly didn't feel the pain at first at all. I felt no pain whatsoever. What I felt was, I felt heat. I felt heat, and I felt as if something were dripping down my hand, you know. And then I looked down and realized that the tip of my finger had been severed, and I was looking directly at my bones.
3-4.
Dr. Moore, based on your analysis, did Mr. Depp's finger injury happen as a result of a vodka bottle being thrown at him?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
I'm sorry.
No.
And what is the basis for that opinion?
Well, the medical data is inconclusive. It's not consistent with what we see in the described injury pattern or in the clinical photographs. And there are several elements. There's the description was of the hand being flat on a bar and the bottle crushing the finger from the top. But looking at the images, there's really no significant injury to the dorsum of the finger, and to create the type of injury with that type of a crush injury, we would anticipate both injury to the fingernail and other parts of the finger.
Thanks for staying with us here on Closing Arguments. I'm Julie Grant in tonight for Vinnie Politan. So what we just saw, there was a big moment in court today when Surgeon Richard Moore told the jury that the medical data does not support Johnny Depp's explanation of how his finger was severed. You'll recall Depp claims the injury occurred when Amber Heard threw a vodka bottle at him, which broke on his hand, taking off the tip of his finger. So in light of this expert testimony, we asked you, our wonderful 13th jurors, did the surgeon's testimony change your mind about what happened to Depp's finger? We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day from Molly, who writes, this orthopedic surgeon never saw Johnny Depp's hand or finger. He was never at the location where it happened. He never saw Johnny Depp as a patient. He did not perform surgery on Johnny Depp. He was not at the hospital where his finger was reattached. Why would I listen to his testimony? He already perjured himself by changing details from his previous deposition. Molly, I love like the most of that there that you wrote there. That could be like a cross-examination. That's really, really great. I'm not talking about the perjury part. I'm staying away from that part. But thank you so much for all of that. We want to also bring in a comment from Anne-Marie tonight. Anne-Marie stated tonight, quote, unfortunately, I have to assume he cut his finger out of desperation with this insane woman. He was probably drunk. Okay, Anne-Marie, thank you so much. We've heard a couple of comments. Let's go around the horn to the think tank. And we have with us, we had some audio problems. So sorry, Al Wunsch. We couldn't connect with you earlier. You were scheduled to be on the show from the top of the hour. And now we have you. So I want to go to you first. You've heard a couple of these comments, the comment of the day from Molly, the one from Anne-Marie. Your thoughts, please.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Darnell for having me thrown into a trunk and all these Connecticut license plates around. I finally got out, and I was able to get, and I'm actually in an undisclosed location, different than the one I'm usually at because I'm a little frightened. But nonetheless, you know what? Look, there's no way that finger was severed the way Johnny Depp said it. I don't care what doctor's up there. It's a scientific impossibility. It is a physical impossibility. It was done by him slamming his hand down on that glass, breaking that glass, and severing the finger. It's the only way it could have possibly happened. It didn't happen being a bottle being thrown at it or anything along those lines. It doesn't make any sense. It's a very, very troubling, version of what goes on. It has to be, according to Johnny, because that makes him look better. But the doctors are nailed it right on. It's a snowball's chance in hell that it happened the way Johnny Depp said.
Al, thank you for that. I want to get comments from Darnell and Jennifer as well. I wanted to go to you first there because I felt bad you didn't get much talk time with us tonight because of the technical problems. Let's take a look at another viewer comment from one of our 13th jurors. This next one comes from Zagnut on Twitter, who writes, quote, Johnny never said his hand was flat on the bar. He described himself leaning back, hand draped over the edge of the bar. The fact he didn't get that right after reviewing the testimony throws out his testimony in my mind. Grasping at straws much, another waste of time. All right there, Jennifer Brandt, tell me what you think of this comment from Zagnut.
Well, I think that Al actually had the best expert testimony. I don't think we need to go any further. But
yeah, you did.
I agree. I mean, we don't know for sure. Nobody knows. Nobody knows except Johnny and Amber, who were there, what really happened. And if his hand moved or it was, held steady, we don't know. The doctor doesn't know. That's why I think this is a lot about nothing. And like we said before, Johnny will have his own expert come in and say something completely different. So is this going to make or break the case? I don't think so. I don't really think it's going to matter. I think there's so many other issues that have come up in this case. I think this is a minor point at best.
Gotcha. All right, let's look at another comment. This one comes from Liv Tonight saying, quote, love hashtag Johnny Depp's reaction. He knows how the tip of his finger was cut off, and this loon isn't going to tell him or the world it did not happen that way. Oh, okay. All right, Liv. Tell us how you really feel. Darnell Crossland, tell me what you think of Liv's comment there.
It's clear that Liz is probably the one that was in the audience with the carriage and the baby, Johnny's baby. It's a love affair that we don't want to get in the middle of. But in terms of anything worth noting, all I can note from that comment is that she totally loves Johnny Depp, but she has nothing to the scientific issue of whether, in fact, that bottle cut his finger off. So I wish them luck in their love affair.
Right. Appreciate it, Darnell. All right, let's see if we get another one. The next comment comes from Jay Kaplan on Twitter, who says, no, it does not change anything. Number one, he did not see Johnny Depp's finger. Number two, he does not know what caused it. He just says it's inconsistent with what Johnny Depp is saying, and he cannot rule out that it was a vodka bottle. Okay, Al Wunsch, let me go to you on this one, because all the time in trials, all the time, experts do not have personal knowledge. If they were all there to witness everything, what a great trial world it would be, right? But that was something that was really heavily focused on by the Depp team in front of this jury. I want to get your take on that as well as this comment, please.
Well, these are experts. These are not treating doctors, okay? And what they're going to do is going to take a look at photographs. They're going to read reports. They're going to take a look at surgical records. And then they're going to put together an opinion. In fact, they're the only people that are allowed to testify as an opinion. And that's what they're doing. They're experts. And they're there for the purposes of trying to help the jury understand the dynamics of an injury. And that's what this doctor did. I mean, let's face it, Johnny was bombed, okay? And so, how much of what he's saying is realistic and how much is, 80 proof, which is the booze he was drinking and the drugs he was on, okay? That's the whole scenario here. These experts come in, they're paid by both sides, they dance with the side who brought them, but they are allowed to give an opinion, despite the fact that they are not at the scene when the accident occurs or when the injury occurs.
Right. I appreciate that, Al. I think that was one point that I think can get lost on a lot of viewers, and through nobody's fault. If you're not familiar with trial advocacy and how the rules work, it can be like, well, geez, he didn't see it, so why are we listening to him? No, we should, because he's an expert. So they're all offering experts, and the jury will decide what weight to give all that testimony. Big thank you to all three of you on my think tank tonight. Al Wunsch, Darnell Crossland, Jennifer Brandt. I appreciate you all weighing in. I appreciate all the insight you shared. Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. And before we leave tonight, we want to share with you some information. The picture of a 13-year-old missing child. Her name is Truly Thomas. She's been missing since May 2nd of this year in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's 5'3" with brown hair and brown eyes. If you have any information on where Truly is, please call Las Vegas Police. The number is 702-828-3111, or you can call 1-800-THE-LOST. Thank you for being with us. Vinny's back tomorrow night. I'm Julie Grant. Have a great evening.
with Worthy.com.
Mr. Depp has behaviors that are consistent with both someone who has a substance use disorder as well as consistent behaviors for someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence.
Was he a polysubstance abuser?
He was.
But the rule says it is unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion about an individual.
According to your logic, if you don't put something in the title, it's not true.
Mechanism of injury or the injury, the bottle would have struck the top of the finger at the fingernail. And the loss is from distal to proximal, which is from the tip back far below the nail. The description differs from the clinical appearance on the images.
Based on your analysis, what has caused Mr. Depp's career downturn?
We talked about the erratic behavior, the tardiness, the drugs and alcohol abuse, and the lawsuits. And every time that L'Oreal mentioned Amber Heard and the product together, they would get harassed. Her publicist company was harassed. But it can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years or more to rehabilitate your career.